I try not to be an alarmist when we get fantasy football news in training camp that's this early on, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't be informed about what is actually happening, because sometimes news does matter and can kind of lead us towards the right direction even this early on in the offseason still, which I believe it is still early. So we got to go through some big fantasy football news that we are getting inside of training camp right now. But first, I need to announce the winner of this week's FFN Hat Award, and it is JMiz2375. Their hottest take was that Zamir White will finish as a top 10 running back in 2024. So JMiz, you get a free hat. Just email me at footballfanalystsnetwork@gmail.com, and I'm still giving away a free hat per week to somebody who goes down there, drops a like on the video, is subscribed to the channel, and gives me their hottest take for 2024 fantasy football. So please go down there, drop a like on the video, subscribe to the channel, and go down there and tell me what your hottest take is. Now let's get into the most important news I think anybody has seen up to this point in training camp. We got word yesterday, as of the time this is coming out to you on YouTube, that CeeDee Lamb is going to hold out in training camp unless he gets a new deal. Now, the significance of this particular situation, I think, is going to be highlighted by something I really haven't seen anybody else on YouTube in fantasy football talk about. So I was kind of curious. Something just kind of rang in my head when I saw this news, CeeDee Lamb holding out, and I thought to myself, how many players have we had in recent memory that held out and missed a decent portion of the season due to injury? Because I always say on this channel, football is such a physical sport that I don't believe that you could just skip all of training camp and come in ready to go in playing shape when you haven't been really touched over the past month or two. I just don't think this sport works like that. So I wanted to put together a list of guys who have held out through training camp or missed training camp due to an injury and there was some sort of hold-in situation, and how their season was in fantasy. Now, the most recent guys that I really gathered here, they were all running backs, which again is a very, very physical position in football. And the guys that I saw here was Josh Jacobs did it last year, Jonathan Taylor did it last year, and J.K. Dobbins did it last year. Now, none of those guys played 17 total games. They all missed at least 4 games, which Josh Jacobs missed 4 games in that particular season. Now, with Jonathan Taylor, he missed a total of 7 games, and of course, J.K. Dobbins goes down immediately in week 1. So, the point here is to illustrate to you guys that there is a potential issue here that I see when a player does decide, I'm not going to participate in training camp. I understand the stand they're taking because they want to get paid. Totally respect that. But there is an issue there when you're playing such a physical sport, which football is, and you don't get hit. So I don't think you could be expected to be ready for the games right away. Now, I do want to note that there is a former superstar on this list, Ezekiel Elliott, also played for the Cowboys and held out throughout training camp and literally got signed to a big deal a couple days before the actual season when Zeke did it in 2019. He ended up playing all 16 games that year and was the running back for. So it's not 100% like you're going to miss time or anything. It's not a big sample size or anything like that. But I do think it's important to note here, just because, like I said, football's a physical sport. So when I'm looking at CeeDee Lamb's underdog price, he's the wide receiver 1 right now, and it does make me a little hesitant to pick him at the wide receiver 1. I wouldn't be surprised if we see that price go down. Maybe he drops below Tyreek Hill. Can't see him really dropping much further. He might drop a spot, if anything at all. So I'll still take him in future underdog drafts. But I do think that I am a little bit nervous about this one. I want to see them sign him as soon as possible, which they very well might. Now, the next piece of news that I have here is also related to a potential holdout. Good news came out of San Francisco, and Brandon Ayuk, and the 49ers been clashing all offseason. Apparently, he's going to report to training camp. So that kind of settles a lot of things that people were questioning with the San Francisco 49ers this whole offseason. Was Ayuk going to get traded? Was he going to hold out? I was always of the belief personally that he wouldn't hold out and miss time. It just doesn't benefit him in any way to really just sit out and make himself look like a diva, which he would portray himself as to other NFL teams. The best thing that he could do for his future in the NFL is to go out there and have another strong season. And this is also paired up with the news that their first round wide receiver pick, Ricky Pearsall, is actually starting on the training camp list on the PUP list. So Ricky Pearsall is not going to be participating in training camp, at least for the start, because of a hamstring injury right here. So, not that Ayuk's job was ever in question with Ricky Pearsall, but with Ayuk coming back, I do think that this is obviously significant, but because we know he's going to be playing for the 49ers this season. So, with Brock Purdy, what are his statistics going to be like? I highlighted him in a video a couple weeks back where I said Ayuk's a little bit of a dangerous player. He had over 17 yards per reception last year, and that simply is just not a very sustainable stat. So what are the chances that he finishes as a top 15 wide receiver this year if he can't repeat that? Do we trust that he's going to be a 1,000-yard receiver? Looking at his line on Underdog right now, his line is at 950.5 receiving yards. Are you taking the higher or are you taking the lower on that? I'm going to take the higher because I do think that even if he doesn't get 115, 120 targets, this is going to be in line with someone who's going to have like a 1,000-yard receiving season if you get like 13 yards per reception. So I would hit the higher personally, and I would say that you could do it too. Go to Underdog in the link in the comments below, use code FFN, and in that first time deposit match, if you deposit at least $10, they're going to give you $250 in free bonus cash to play around with in there. They're throwing free money at you to go play some pick'em leagues, or you could just join an Underdog draft. So go down there, use code FFN to sign up for Underdog. Now, the next piece of news also I find very significant. Jordan Love, quarterback of the Green Bay Packers, had a great season last year towards the back half. Apparently, he will not practice until he gets a new deal from the Green Bay Packers. This could be catastrophic. And it's not that I don't think the Green Bay Packers want him. The question is, what is their number that each side has in mind? Because when you look at what Jordan Love did last year, Jordan Love, from a full season perspective, looked good. But when you broke it down into each half of the season, the first half of the season was not very good for Jordan Love. He was not a top 10 quarterback in fantasy. Then in the back half of the season, and it even stretched into the playoffs, Jordan Love ascended. So I think that the trajectory for Jordan Love is on the up and up. I think this Green Bay offense is going to be elite this year as long as Jordan Love plays. So what does the team view his value at based on the split of performance last year, and how does Jordan Love view it? Because you know Jordan Love's trying to get a big deal out of this. Does Green Bay meet that number? That's the only thing that gives me worry, and I probably have some bias because I actually have Jordan Love on a dynasty team, so I really want him to go out there. But I do ultimately think that Jordan Love will go ahead and sign a new deal, even if it is like a 2-year deal with a 3rd-year option type of thing, where he could get some more money on top of it. I do think that they'll sign Jordan Love because I don't think they want to play around with this too long in Green Bay. Now, with the next piece of news, this could be a massive ripple effect throughout the entire wide receiving core of the Vikings. Apparently, Sam Darnold is going to take the majority of first-team reps in training camp, to open training camp at the very least. Now, this is not some news that I think anybody really wants to hear. The possibility that we see Sam Darnold as that starting quarterback for the Vikings this year makes us all probably feel a little bit sick to our stomachs right here. Now, this is an interesting thing because Sam Darnold has never been a starting quarterback since he left the Carolina Panthers, and he didn't even finish the season for them as a full-time starter. Sam Darnold has been a backup now for many, many years. Now, a lot of people have already had questions on JJ McCarthy. Is he ready? Is he not ready? Does he need a little bit more time? I think those questions are very valid. He wasn't the most exciting prospect ever, but he was definitely a decent prospect. What I will say about that is this. JJ McCarthy was selected inside of the top 10 of the NFL draft this year. Dating back to 2014, the only 2 quarterbacks who were selected inside of the top 10 of their particular draft and did not start at any point in their rookie season were Patrick Mahomes and Trey Lance. In other words, it's a very unlikely thing to happen in history. So let's play this out, right? Let's say that Sam Darnold does start the season as their quarterback. Well, that obviously will affect some wide receiver options like Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison if he ends up playing badly. But then JJ McCarthy comes in at some point and probably raises the ceiling of that offense entirely. So either way, we're looking at Vikings wide receivers here. Justin Jefferson is obviously a top 5 wide receiver. And when you look at Jordan Addison, he's going as like a wide receiver 4 in fantasy right now. And he's actively dropping because of the DUI arrest he recently got. Am I off Vikings wide receivers? No, not necessarily, because I do believe in the coach, Kevin O'Connell. And I do actually think that JJ McCarthy will play. And I think he'll be fine for them. So I'm not going to say that I'm off of Vikings wide receivers. I would largely just say keep an eye on this one, because I think if what I think comes true, this will largely be a non-factor come week 6 of the fantasy football season. Now, the next piece of news right here is that TJ Hawkinson, same team. If you remember, he tore his ACL in December of 2023, literally right there at the end of the season. Now, there has been no timetable for return as of today for TJ Hawkinson. The report is that he's well ahead of schedule from an ACL tear in December. Now, this is always a good thing to hear, right? This is something that you definitely want to hear about. Oh, maybe I could draft a TJ Hawkinson on Underdog at price because he is going at a good value and maybe he provides upside earlier than I thought he would. I would still caution people from doing it too much because there's still not a timetable for return. If you don't have a timetable for return, that typically says that you're still not very close to playing. Nick Chubb is dealing with the same problem. Nick Chubb, a lot of reports have been good. There's no timetable for him either. So until I see an actual definitive timetable that we can expect from TJ Hawkinson to return, I'm not super interested in taking him, and I definitely wouldn't take him in a redraft league at cost. So TJ Hawkinson, I'm waiting for the official timetable to come out. When is he actually going to be ready to play? What does the timetable look like? Because as of right now, all we have to go off of is word of mouth. And I'm sorry, but actions prove louder than words. Give me a timetable, give me some firm data to work with, and then I'll be more interested in him. Now, the next piece of news here is probably insignificant, but I do want to say this for deeper leagues and for someone you might want to look at as a potential sleeper here. Rashad Bateman of the Baltimore Ravens just recently signed a new deal with them. Not very expensive, but he's staying with them. And he's been making some noise in Baltimore this offseason. John Harbaugh just came out with high praise for Rashad Bateman. Said he expects him to be one of the league's best wide receivers this year. Now, I didn't realize that John Harbaugh had a gift for hyperbole, but I guess he does, because I don't know what real person around the NFL expects that. I don't think that there's any chance he's a better fantasy player than Zay Flowers is. I just don't see how you can take what Zay did in his rookie year and all of a sudden decide that you're going to give more opportunities to Rashad Bateman, which is what it would require for him to be the league's best wide receiver. So I would largely say, don't think too much about this. Like, don't draft him super ahead of ADP. And the only league I'd be interested in him is an underdog league. An underdog league where he's going that late and he's a potential late round sleeper, I can understand taking the upside swing on a guy like this. But I think largely what we've seen from Rashad Bateman over the years is just a lot of inconsistent play, and he just hasn't really fit too well in the Ravens offense. So I'm largely not really considering this to be very big news right here. Now, the last piece of news comes out of Kansas City. This is very interesting news right here. So obviously we know Isaiah Pacheco is the starting running back for the Kansas City Chiefs. Nobody's questioning that. The running back 2, apparently so far, has been Deneric Prince, a former undrafted free agent. He's running ahead of Clyde Edwards-Helaire. And on top of that, Kadarius Toney is also apparently getting running back snaps for the Kansas City Chiefs this offseason in training camp. Where do we go from here? First, I think we need to address whether Isaiah Pacheco is a concern at cost. Isaiah Pacheco right now is a top 15 running back in underdog. Are we concerned about taking Isaiah Pacheco at price? I'm personally not. Isaiah Pacheco, I really don't see there being a timeshare if Deneric Prince is the running back 2. I think what this means, really in my eyes, is that Clyde Edwards-Helaire is just not very good. They whipped on Clyde Edwards-Helaire in the first round several years ago. So I think what they're saying is he's just not very good. We need to get a better offense. We need to get a better running back too. And Deneric Prince looks like that guy right now. So I wouldn't say that Pacheco's volume is in danger of being a running back 1 or a high-end running back 2 in fantasy football. I don't think you need to worry about Pacheco. Now, the Kadarius Toney piece is interesting just from the perspective of a best ball league. In best ball, he's undrafted right now. So what this will mean is that over the next several days to maybe a week, you'll see Kadarius Toney get drafted in the last round or 2 of underdog best ball drafts. I would take a shot on him personally just to see maybe if they did get creative with him, to see if maybe he did have some upside, because I've always liked the talent. He just hasn't come through because he's just not very reliable catching the football. So this is probably his best shot to make a roster spot on the 53-man roster. So maybe they're just trying him out to see what happens here. But I do think if you're drafting in like 10 underdog leagues, might be worth a shot to take him at the back of your underdog draft. So let me know which player you think is the most affected by this news today. And if you're drafting soon and you have the 10th or 11th or 12th pick in your draft, click on this video right here to see the best strategy for that range.